We'll go to board comment now, and there is no time limit on it. We'll start with Mr. Bergeron.
Well, first, I want to congratulate Colonel Reynolds. As a former commissioner for the FWC for a decade, I can tell you my experience with her. It didn't matter if it was midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, all the issues, every time I called. I want to thank you so much for her leadership and her vision to protect one of the natural wonders of the world. It's been a great relationship, and we want to make sure you stay around. And for all of that, I'm going to give you a gift, free alligator wrestling lessons. But thank you for your total dedication. Our meeting yesterday, I just want to say that these workshops, I know it takes a lot of time, but I tell you, it's so important that we're able to listen to all of our stakeholders. And I thought the panel that was chosen, Drew, was an excellent panel, people with great knowledge. And I think it allowed all of us to be able to have a dialogue with experts and be very transparent on all of the different issues that we're going to be dealing with. I think as we continue to go forward with Everglades restoration, that we have to look at all the projects that we've built over the last 18, 19 years, and we have to examine any missing links that would allow us to connect and get the benefits of billions of dollars that we have spent in connecting modified water delivery, and then addressing the quality of water issues with the additional monitoring that we are doing to see how we can get our quality of water right for the future of 8.7 million people in 16 counties. And but I really, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the workshops. I think they're just extremely important for us to connect all the dots, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. Ms.
Thank
Roma?
you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo Ron's remarks about Colonel Reynolds. As a new board member, she has been just instrumental in assisting my understanding in terms of the interrelationships between the Corps and the district, and also so generous with her time in assisting the basin with the Picayune Strand and unraveling all of the pieces of that. And your leadership will be missed, but your partnership, I hope, will continue. And I really appreciate that. Also, the workshop that we had last night, talk about a wealth of information that we could really use. And I think that something that jumped out at me was the fact that even more so than what I thought before, how interconnected everything is. And at a previous meeting, we talked about sequencing, and I think that becomes even more important when you add that layer of understanding of those pieces that we learned about last night. You have so many natural systems interconnected. Then you have our actions creating conditions that changes the setting for those natural conditions. And then you have the service responsibility that we have to the citizens of Florida. And that is a whole bunch of stuff it's interconnected to the degree that we have to figure it out so that we know what to do first in order to move forward in the best possible way. And it was just for me anyway, it was just a window into all those natural systems and how they're interconnected. Not to mention flood protection, water supply, and everything else. So that's going to be a challenge. Thank you.
Vice Chair Wagner.
I would also like to echo thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds. She's getting praised a lot around here today, but it's totally deserved. The work she's done has been meaningful, and she's really been a master of her craft, I think, especially in 3 ways, which the interaction is not necessarily easy with many of our stakeholders. She has always, to me, been poised. She has always been prepared, and she has always been pleasant. And I think, you know, what you start to learn in your own situation as a governing board member on this board is that things come at you pretty quickly from a variety of different directions and a variety of different stakeholders, and you think at one moment you're pleasing everybody, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes out, you know, they've got a real concern. And I think Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds has really handled that is an example of how at least I aspire to handle a lot of these situations. So thank you very much for your service. You are certainly going to be missed, and I'd be surprised if your phone wasn't ringing, even though you left sort of formally here. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. I also want to thank staff for yesterday's workshop. It was incredibly beneficial. We only had obviously 4 hours. I think we were done in 4 hours and 15 minutes, so not too bad there. And the information was done, I think, just right. It was teed up correctly. The charts were fantastic. The information that was given was, frankly, stuff I had not seen really before. And the way that it was presented, I thought, was incredibly helpful. It was really a positive meeting with a lot of optimism from everybody across the board in terms of where we are and where we're hopefully going. I would like to, I mentioned it yesterday, and I think it's important to be mentioned again. I do think this is something we should be examining and pushing forward boldly. Is this, you know, it doesn't seem like a massive project, but to me it seemed like there was a lot of buy-in from a lot of stakeholders who typically aren't on the same side of things. They agreed to this sort of curtain wall, you know, protecting the seepage of the water east and keeping it in the park while keeping some of the farm areas drier. To me, that was a very positive piece of or project we can look into. I hope we'll push it forward in an effort to try to get things on the board that help us. I do think, you know, Ron's comments are correct. We're close to getting things really, really, I mean, we've got a lot of tools in our shed, but there's some element of plugging them in together. And it feels like we're really close, and if we can do that, you know, hopefully we can create the magic that we need to sort of thread the needle on all these issues. So I would like to look at that seepage wall because I do think that it's very important we have commonality with stakeholders on that.
Thanks. I'm going to echo my colleague's sentiments for Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds. I met you, I think it was last summer, in less than ideal circumstances, and your communication skills are unbelievable. I remember watching you deal with some people on the West Coast who were not happy at all, and for good reason, and you did it with such poise. You're a real testament to the Army's best, and I can't thank you enough, and you are going to be missed. I'd also like to thank our staff. The preparation for Hurricane Dorian was incredible. I was so impressed with that. I don't know if people who don't watch this district day to day probably don't understand all that goes in behind the scenes to make sure everything keeps running when we have a hurricane or preparing for a hurricane. And I thank you to all the staff. I know it's incredibly disruptive. I know you're always worried about your families. You're always worried about your own personal property. And at the same time, you rise above that and put that aside and make sure that's taken care of, and then worry about the residents of South Florida. So I really appreciate that, and I thank you from the governing board and from the residents of South Florida for all you did. Luckily, we didn't have it. We had a miss, but the preparation was phenomenal, and this governing board's all new. Drew, I know you and Sean and knew, Jennifer here knew, so everyone sort of got to see this as a trial run, but it was a really good trial run, and I thank you all because it could have been bad. I'd like to talk to something about something I haven't talked about before, and I'm not allowed to talk to anyone unless we're sitting here in this situation. So I want to talk to Chair Roman a little bit about Big Cypress Basin. I've been approached by two of the municipalities in southern Lee County about trying to expand the borders of Big Cypress Basin into southern Lee County. And that's something that we haven't talked about at all because we can't. I've talked a little bit to staff about it, but it's something that I'd like to explore further and sort of see if that's possible, if it makes sense to do. I've talked to the legislative delegation in Lee and Northern Collier, and they're okay with it, or at least with us exploring it. So that's something that, you know, in the next couple of meetings, if we can put that on the agenda to start taking a look at, I'd like to do that. And I don't know if you've had any interaction with Estero or Benita about it.
We've had some, the basin administrator, Lisa Keeler, has been in some meetings, some initial discussions regarding what their expectations might be and what they'd hope to get out of that. And we've also had some conversations with the county as well, but they're all preliminary at this point.
Great. I just wanted to make sure you were up to speed, or as up to speed as I am, which it sounds like you are, and that we can sort of pursue exactly what the boundary changes should be if they make sense for the district, if they make sense for Lee County and Benita and Estero, and if they do, then let's see what we need to do.
I think the initial challenge has been them being able to express what their expectations are and what they hope to get out from such a merger to join the basin. That's been the challenge so far. So hopefully we can nail that down and we can talk about it further.
Great. I hope that Lisa, the executive director, will be able to help them understand what we can and can't do as a district, and you can do as a basin. And I appreciate your help with that.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Lipich?
The first time Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds came to the Rivers Coalition meeting, which is always, pit of vipers sometimes. I mean, a lot of upset people with the estuary situation. I watched her change that room without even saying a word. She came in, and rather than talking down to people, so to speak, at the podium, she came in and she looked at the people sitting at the table and kind of non-verbally asked if she could sit at the table with the board members. And she did. And she sat down talking to the Rivers Coalition. And all of that tenseness just melted away. And I thought, that's a superstar. So thank you very much for the big things and the little things that you've taught us all. I wanted to thank Dr. Gary Goforth for his comments about no releases and our wonderful governor and our staff. Thank you very much. And I myself was probably for the very first time, and I've been here since 1965, I was scared when Dorian was heading straight towards us. And I want to thank all of the South Florida Water Management staff for all of the work they did. I was obsessed on it. I sat in on all the EOC calls that I could. And another thing with all of that is we help the people of the Bahamas and deal with it ourselves. I really think in our strategic plan, resiliency needs to be a part of our strategic plan, which it's not now. We're in a new world. I also wanted to briefly ask that with the 40E-61 rulemaking, that I brought this up at my briefing, that hopefully as a group, when we go into those public talks, that we don't just open up to the public without some kind of expectation from the board or structure, because that will be so complex that I think it will be difficult for the public to just show up at a meeting, and they might start talking about other things too, because they don't know what the rulemaking process allows for 40E-61. So my request is for some more structure communication-wise, and as a board, what we know we're going into when we get to that. My last thing may take some time, but I think it's very important, and I wrote it out. Joe Negron and the Everglades agricultural area was a tremendous part of the culture that got us all to where we are today. What Joe Negron did with his career as president of the Senate to put his name and his everything on the line for that EAA reservoir. And I just want to make sure that it stays front and center for all of us. And when you read the comments from Governor DeSantis, his first lines almost always talk about making sure to expedite the EAA reservoir, Tamiami Trail, you know, and I just want to make sure that as these meetings go by and time goes by, that that the public especially kind of knows where we are. So I asked who the project manager was from Mr. Mitnick for the EAA reservoir, and he gave me Leslie Waugh is her name. And yet another one of these remarkable people behind the scenes. And I wanted to read this to you. It'll take about 3 minutes, I think. Recently, I spoke with EAA project manager Leslie Waugh, South Florida Water Management District. Ms. Waugh told me that she and her team, and she made this up, I didn't, are working every day for the EAA, because I was worried. I'm like, are you guys doing anything? What's going on? She's like, yes, Ms. Thurlow, we're working every day for the EAA, because we don't hear that much sometimes. The work falls mostly into two categories, design work and planning work. As far as design work, a design contract has been secured by for the stormwater treatment area with a contractor, Brown and Caldwell. This is kind of like how things work if you've ever hired an architect to build your house. There's a lot of back and forth, and sometimes it can be contentious. My husband and I didn't move forward with our house, but we will move forward with the EA reservoir. As far as planning work, right now there is a lot of pre-construction engineering occurring. This includes a team of people. Their field work includes surveys and geotechnical site work to understand the site conditions. For thousands of acres, the total site is about 17,000 acres. So they have to do all the geotechnical work to understand that those lands are quote unquote buildable. As this must be known before anything can be designed and built. Another part of the South Florida Water Management District's planning work includes a back and forth between the South Florida Water Management and the Army Corps of Engineers for the post-authorization change report. This is one of those names that for the public it's hard to keep that in your mind, what that means. This is part of Federal Section 203 review that must be completed. You might remember that in SEP, the A2, which is the piece of land that this is going to be built on, was going to be a flow equalization basin. The post-authorization change report changed the flow equalization basin to a reservoir and added a stormwater treatment area. So now the South Florida Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers are figuring out all the details to adapt SEP to include the EAA reservoir. This process began in October 2018. It should be completed by April of 2020. Mind you, all these acronyms are just enough to drive us all insane. But the EIS and the NEPA are part of this 203 review. So for the public, most of us are familiar with this, there's a lot of stuff that has to be done. It's not like, think of on a local level trying to build your house in the town of Sewell's Point. People were constantly complaining about how long it took to get their permits and to go through everything. we're talking about something on such a larger level. So there are federal and state things that have to be done. They are looking for things like cultural resources and impacts to endangered species. Those are things that the environmental community is, of course, excited about. We want those things protected, of course, and so it might take some time, which are coordinated and they are coordinated by the appropriate agencies and tribes. We are hoping the NEPA process is completed by early 2019. The South Florida Water Management District hopes to receive their permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to start building the stormwater treatment intake canal by early next year, after the NEPA is complete. The rest of the STA is expected to start construction in January 2021. The Army Corps themselves, after going through all of their requirements with hopes to begin building the EAA reservoir, should start after 3 years of design. So that would mean starting construction in 2023 and finishing around 2028. The good thing is the STA can function independently of the reservoir, so that can start working right away. Remember, on an even larger scale, that the EAA reservoir will work together with other components of all of SERP. Nothing functions alone, just like in nature. SEP, North, and the southern features, like opening almost all of the entire Tamiami Trail, completing COP, which is the bottom of the system, and all of the C-111 details. For people who are from where I'm from, the C-111 is all the stuff in the south off to the east, kind of by Homestead, as well as finishing the S-333, which is a giant structure that, because the poor little birds are making it so we can't dump into, not dump, that's the wrong word, can't allow water into the Everglades, they're working that 333 structure. All of these improvements will be part of a key of sending more clean water to Everglades National Park and Florida Bay and reducing the discharges to the northern estuaries. In the end, in years to come, the reservoirs C43, C44, C23, and C24 and the EAA will complement each other and the system. This process is long. It is easy to be impatient. But the goal is to do the right thing the first time, so it doesn't end up like 10 Mile Creek. These are exciting times, and your advocacy is needed to keep the wheels turning. Thank you for letting me take so much time. Those dates will be something that the general public, if they're concerned, they can go back to this meeting and check, find those dates, and I will continue to to make reports on the Everglades agricultural area. And thank you, Joe Negron, and everybody else for getting that to start changing the culture of the South Florida Water Management District.
Thank you, Mr. Lipich. Ms. Mead?
I just want to echo what Scott has said about the seepage wall. I just want to echo what Scott has said about the seepage wall. I'm really would love for staff to bring that to us to look at what has been done on that project. I understood from yesterday that there are documents that we can look at. And we have built this seepage wall at the 8.5 mile, 8.5. Don't we have a seepage wall that we built at the 8.5 mile at that corner? No? Okay. I love the way he smiles at us when we don't know what we're talking about. Go ahead, John.
So the seepage wall that you're talking about that has already been constructed, it was actually constructed by the rock miners down in South Dade. It runs on the north, well, actually just south of Tamiami Trail, just west of the L31. So if you're looking at a map, you're looking at the crossroads and the intersection of Chrome and Tamiami Trail. So just south of there, there's a 4-mile wall that goes down towards the south that has already been constructed. And that's what Tom McVicker was referring to yesterday during the workshop.
Got it.
There's not any seepage wall around the 8.5 square mile area, no.
Okay, and do we, with that seepage wall, do we still have to pump? Does it, anyway, we don't have to talk about it now. If you could bring that to the board so that we can look at it as a project and as an option, I think that would be great.
Thanks. Mr. Steinle?
Thank you. Are we on here? You can hear me? You know, Colonel Reynolds, I think in the short time I've been here, we've all been here, I think we all would agree that you exemplify what we expect in every way from public servants, and I'm sorry to call you a public servant, but in this light, it's a positive, very, very strong positive. So I wish we had more time to work together, and I join others in thanking you for your service. I too want to recognize the professionalism of the staff in preparing for the hurricane, and I think the chair's letter to that effect, you know, sort of described that as the first severe storm that we've experienced as a board. It certainly gave me full faith and confidence in our staff's ability to safeguard South Florida residents and resources. So again, thank you for that. I also want to, while it's not in our lane, I think it makes sense to recognize the outpouring of support by all the residents in South Florida, both financially and in action as they come to the aid of our Bahamian neighbors. If you've been involved with this, if you've watched the news, if you've kept up online, these are the types of things that renew your faith in the human spirit, and I think we need more of that because, especially for them, this is going to be a long rebuilding process. On that note, we need to recognize that we dodged a bullet here. And as a result of that and other progress that we've made, we're not talking about releases. We're not hearing about releases to estuaries. And luckily, coming into the wet season with a lower lake gave us in the Corps more options. That's what we need, more options. We need more resources. This is progress. I think, though, it makes sense as a board to be very clear with the public and everybody else that even with a more intelligent or scientifically driven lake management program, water management program, we were going into Dorian, as John has data on, we were at a slightly higher level of the lake than we were going into Irma. So what does that mean? Had we gotten the 3 feet of lake rise that was expected, it does not mean that the estuaries wouldn't have seen releases. We have to keep that in mind. We would have been probably over 17 or close to 17. So even with all the progress we've made, there's still a real risk with extreme events that estuaries and other relief areas that we don't want to use, we want to use southbound flow, will feel the pressure. So what this did for me, it really reinforced, you know, the past 2 weeks really reinforced what we already know, is that we need to accelerate all these programs that we're talking about. We need to accelerate our storage programs, our treatment programs. We need to accelerate our nutrient reduction programs at the source, and make sure that these are enforced, and give the staff, give the other agencies as many tools as we can, as possible to manage in these extreme events. So I think, from my perspective, you know, the iron's hot. We come out of the past 2 weeks with a clearer understanding of why what we're doing is so important. And I think we, and all the agencies involved with these projects and ideas that we need to get implemented need to just redouble our focus and expedite as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Steinle.
Mr. Chairman, can I say one other thing real quick?
Of course.
I'd like to thank the governor for his leadership in making all of this possible for us to proceed in protecting 16 counties and protecting our environment, our quality of life, the fishing capital of the world, the boating capital of the world, 100 million people that come here, tourists, and giving us the opportunity. I want to thank our staff, too, for that, their presentation yesterday, and for their preparation for the hurricane. We're very blessed to have such talented people to present what I seen here yesterday. And I also think we need to have some kind of meeting in regards to this 8.5 square mile area and where we can resolve and be able to implement the first, second stage of modified water delivery. I think we should meet with the Corps, South Florida Water Management, and possibly Dade County and resolve any issues that would stop the natural sheet flow to Florida Bay. So I'd like to request that, and I want to thank all of our stakeholders, the input that they give us at every meeting. It's all about we, and so thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. I will follow up on your comment regarding the governor. I think we all saw yesterday the release he had and the statement he made in Naples regarding next year's funding and his request for another $625 million, which is wonderful news for us. It allows us to keep doing our work.